Our fourth performer tonight, Jim Ruland, is the books columnist for San Diego City Beat, runs the Southern California-based reading series Vermin on the Mount, and is a member of the Galandria Arts Collective right here in Barrio Logan. He also writes books from time to time. He's a fan of Strong Coffee, Rick and Morty, and the LA Dodgers. Here's Jim.
People always say, Jim, you look like you have your shit together. That wasn't funny. Why don't you talk to my irresponsible son or daughter about why joining the military would be a great idea for them? Which I always say, fuck no, I'm not going to do that. And sometimes they accept it, sometimes they get indignant, and they demand to know a reason why. That reason, well, I'm going to tell a story about it. At 0400 hours on the day my life changed forever, I was standing at attention with a dozen shivering recruits inside the largest meal-producing facility in the universe, awaiting orders from a gangly 19-year-old sailor in a white t-shirt and a paper hat. The harsh fluorescent lights seemed to reflect off a zillion stainless steel surfaces. My hands were numb, my body confused. I was groggy from lack of sleep, but thrilled to be inside the galley at Great Lakes Recruit Training Command, away from the wind whistling off Lake Michigan. As the babyface autocrat went down the line, handing out work assignments, delivering us to our fates, the realization started to sink in that I'd be on my feet and working my ass off for the next 16 hours straight. Bakery, serving line, scullery, deep sink. They were the lucky ones. I was dispatched to the ovens to work with Mike, a foul-tempered brute with a complexion like wet dough and circles under his eyes that were so deep and dark he looked like he'd been up for days. He kept his long, greasy hair in a net. His arms were clotted with terrible tattoos. His teeth inspired nightmares. He was the kind of guy who said things like, "Old enough to bleed, old enough to breed." The work was simple but dangerous. Everything was hot, slippery, or sharp. Before breakfast was served, I managed to move 100 trays of bacon from the massive ovens, drain off the crackling grease, and stack the trays in a rolling meat locker without injuring myself. After a couple hours, Mike opened up a little, started cracking jokes he'd probably told 1,000 times before. His comments were crass, his jokes profane. I wanted no part of it. I kept my head down and my mouth shut. After lunch, we switched from bacon to beef. It went like this. I took a tray out of the oven, speared a roast with a long fork, and placed it in a stainless steel bin. And when that bin was full, I brought it to Mike, and he pushed the roast through a meat slicer. We were in a pretty good rhythm when it happened. The blade got snagged on a piece of gristle, and the roast shot off the slicer and stayed airborne for several spectacular seconds before it hit the deck. Mike and I looked at that hunk of meat for a long, long time, studying it, you might say. There was a puddle where the blood had squirted out, and the roast was coated with grime. Now, I was pretty sure that Mike was deliberating whether or not he should put the beef back on the slicer. And I wouldn't have said anything if that's what he wanted to do. I might have volunteered to rinse it off first, but that's it. I really didn't care one way or the other. But Mike, he had other ideas. You want to fuck it? It took me a moment to process this ungodly solicitation. I thought he might be joking. I prayed that he was joking. He wasn't joking. I'll drill a hole in it. You can take it back to the cooler before it gets cold. What do you say? Now, I was many things. The son of a naval officer, a slacker, a punk. But I wasn't someone who did unspeakable things to inanimate objects. Not yet, anyway. Come on. I know you ain't getting no action in them barracks. Plenty of round eye, though. That's when I understood that Mike, a federally employed wage slave in the food service sector, wasn't just offering to drill the hole. He wanted me to screw the meat. And in the gospel according to Mike, anyone who declined his invitation to have intercourse with a hot, bloody hole in a piece of cow carcass must be gay, which was the worst thing a sailor in Ronald Reagan's Navy could be. I shook my head. What a shame, Mike said as he kicked the roast with the toe of his boot for picking it up and tossing it in the trash. It's still warm. We finished slicing the rest of the roast. I stacked the bins in the meat locker and wheeled them up to the serving line. When it was time for my break, I got in line and stared at all those mounds of rare roast beef. My heart started racing, and I broke into a sweat. The drugs the Navy supposedly put in the pancake batter to suppress our animal urges weren't working. Somewhere in the soft pink folds and shadowy dimples was my meat friend. The association had been made, and nothing could unmake it. The meat was making me horny. And it will be the same for you. The next time you're standing in line at a buffet, at a birthday or a wedding, and the server forks a glistening slab of hot, bloody meat onto your plate, you will think of me. You will think of Mike. You will think of our lost innocence. Thank you.